Hello, She Is Me listeners. My name is Tammy Zdunich, and I am so honored to be here. I want to just start by acknowledging that I'm on Treaty 6 territory, homeland of the Métis, and I want to reaffirm my commitment to reconciliation with all Indigenous peoples. Professionally, I am a creative entrepreneur, a joy seeker. I seek happiness everywhere I go. I am the mother of 3, and we're hoping they don't turn up in my room tonight. We'll see. And a wife of 1. So that's a little bit about me. I do have 3 businesses as well that I run in collaboration with partners. I'm very partnership focused. So I have the Well Collaborative. I also run Inner Illume and Tammy Zdunich Photography. And I will touch on those a little bit more at the end. So, one thing I'll mention about my story before I start is I get very nervous and very excited, and it's a whole part of my mental health, mental illness, and my journey. And I talk a lot about that in my story. So, I just let my heart beat and I use it, and my therapist calls it nerve sighted. So, if I have to give Jen credit, but if that's something you haven't heard before, it's a fun term. It feels like a little bit of freedom for me. It feels good. And so that's how I refer to that. So, first thing is that I have 2 core values, and they are a thread in everything that I do. One is faith, and the other is freedom. And tonight's talk is called The Pursuit of Freedom. So, in order for my business pursuits to be sustainable, the 3 businesses that I mentioned, they need to align with both of my values. It's going to have one quick drink of water. So today, while I do have the faith and the freedom, and you will hear that thread of faith throughout everything that I talk about, I am going to focus on the pursuit of freedom. And the 4 aspects of freedom and my pursuit to freedom that I am constantly on that journey are surrender, support, trust, and confidence. And that's the order I'm going to present them in tonight. So surrender, when I looked up the definition of surrender, it said to yield control, power, or possession to another. Surrender, that actually sounds kind of scary, like it sounds very vulnerable. And I think in order to surrender, you need to fully trust who you are surrendering to. For me, I surrender to God. That is the only being I can fully 100% trust. So a lot of that is how I have worked through to find freedom in my own life. So mine is not a story with all the answers. So I'm a work in progress. Even in preparing this, I thought, well, I don't have these solid answers that are going to solve people's problems. I have a story and an offering, and it's very human, and it is the pursuit of freedom. I'm going to start with the day that everything crashed down around me. I was in my early 20s. I had been dealing with mental illness since I was 7, is kind of when I first remember it starting. And I had been slowly creating and closing myself into an agoraphobic box. So first I had quit my job, and then I just kind of slowly stopped talking to friends. The fear crippled me with self-doubt, and I couldn't even walk around my neighborhood block. I remember this one story of trying to walk around the block because I remember people would say, well, if you want to be healthy and, you need to regulate your heartbeat. If you're having panic attacks and anxiety and agoraphobia, you need to regulate your heart rate. So running or walking was a great way. Exercise was a great way to do that. So I remember the one day thinking, I just need to do this. I'm just going to go outside for a walk. I can do this. So I venture out on my walk to go around the block. And the blocks were square blocks where I lived at that time. And there was kind of like this middle section that was going to be the point of no return. And in my body and in my head, I knew that. So I left my house and I I turned and I turned the corner and I was nearing the point of no return where if I hit that point, I knew then, then I was committed. Then I was committed. It was like I had to go the whole way. And for those of you who aren't familiar with mental illness, agoraphobia, panic disorder, this may sound like a totally crazy story. Um, but what I did was I got like almost to the point of no return. And then I just stopped my walk. I turned around and I hightailed it back home. I ran like the whole way home. And it was not a good feeling. What it was another thing that I couldn't do. Um, I was trapped and I was trapping myself in a box that I built for my own protection, or so I thought. My fear, my internal discomfort and anxiety had closed me in so tight that there was nowhere else I could hide. I had been in my house for about 3 months and unable to leave without assistance. This is agoraphobia, an avoidance of anywhere you've previously experienced a panic attack. So when my husband came home that weekend and I could no longer make myself any smaller or more invisible, I cracked. I knew inside that I had to make a choice to live or to die. And I don't say this lightly. I have lost members to suicide in my own family. And I know a lot of people who've dealt with mental illness have contemplated suicide at one point or another. For me, it was really clear and simple at that point. I was desperate, and what I wanted was freedom to do the things of my dreams, but I had built a box and locked myself in it. And I mean, from a young age, I have dealt with mental illness every day, and it still cripples me. I feel it now. I react to it differently. It doesn't stop me from pursuing what I want, ultimately freedom. So my story is one of living in discomfort and moving forward my way. And what happened on that evening 20 years ago was a falling to my knees. And I literally fell to the ground when I said to my husband, I can't do this anymore. And it's funny because I had mentioned it to him the other day, that moment and how profound that moment was for me. It was a turning point in my life in my early 20s. And he can't recall it. Like he was like, "Oh, I have no memory of that." I'm like, "Honey, I was like it was like death or live, like live or die in that moment for me." And it's interesting that other people don't know your experience. So even those people closest to you, when you are crying out for help, they don't know. So I guess why I'm saying that is that's why professionals are so important in those situations. People that know what you're talking about and know how to deal with it. So in that moment, I knew that I couldn't do this anymore. I can live or I can die. And I also knew that I loved life and I'm a very joyful person. And even in that time in my life, I was still joyful. I still had moments of joy that I was experiencing. So that makes it very confusing. I knew I had a lot of dreams and I had a lot to accomplish. And I knew that that was waiting for me on the other side. I had always been a really high achiever in high school and in academia, and I was also creative and I was full of life. And this trapped person ultimately wasn't me. And but I guess I didn't know what it was. I really didn't know what it was. No one talked about mental illness 20 years ago. This was about just over 20 years ago when this was all happening for me. And if they did, it was with shame attached. I do remember a doctor saying to me, yeah, I don't think he was being shameful, but it was very shameful for me. I just remember him very kind of like ripping the band-aid, just saying, this was before this even was going on where I had this moment where I'd fallen to my knees. And I remember the doctor just saying, "Oh, you just have generalized anxiety disorder. You just need a medication." And I was like, how dare he? Like, I remember being so offended in that moment. So I guess that was just partially how, it was so normal to him and to me, it was not. So, um, I do find shame is still very prevalent in society in terms of mental health and mental illness, and it's used and abused to get us to behave in a way that is comfortable for the people around us. and us as in people who struggle with mental illness. Um, what I have learned is that we need to prioritize ourself and our health above anything else in our lives, because when we're not well, it affects everyone around us, our families and our children and our friendships and ourselves, ultimately our ability to be successful in what we want to be successful in. So I had decided on that beautiful day to surrender, and that is my first step to freedom. I surrendered to God that day. I faced death and said, I am not ready yet. I want to live. I couldn't struggle anymore. I couldn't force myself to be well anymore. I had to surrender to what is, what was, whatever will be, no control, no knowing, just moving forward one step at a time. And for me, that was my rock bottom moment. And what transpired out of that was a sort of bold truth telling. People often say I'm bold or I'm blunt. I prefer bold to blunt, but they, either or. And I think it came out of these moments in my early years. I was I had decided to come out of hiding, both figuratively and emotionally. If I was going to be okay, I needed to be a bold truth teller. And in practical terms, that just meant telling anyone who would listen what was going on with me. Um, it is the simplest yet most profound thing you can do. It's the scariest, I think. Due to shame and judgment, it's often the hardest thing to do. People have an opinion on what you say, and they will interpret your story through their lens. You are opening yourself up to judgment when you do this, which I think is why, people who suffer are so uncomfortable with telling others. But I want to say, and I feel like this has been my story for 20 years, is you don't have to be embarrassed. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You just need to ask for help, and you need someone to help you who has knowledge. And what you're going through, other people have went through, and there are people who know and who can help you. And if telling others helps you get better, then please do that. And if telling a therapist is the only person that feels safe to you, then do that. Seek help. Mental illness is not shameful. It's very normal. It's very common. So I do have some numbers here I want to share with you. And these are so I'm in Canada, based in Canada. I didn't say that. These are from the Canadian Mental Health Association. So they'll be different for people in the States, in the US. So everyone has mental health and will experience challenges regarding their mental well-being, but not everyone will experience mental illness. Mental illness indirectly affects all Canadians at some point, either through their own experience or that of a family member, friend, or colleague. In any given year, 1 in 5 people in Canada will personally experience a mental health problem or illness. By age 40, about 50% of the population will have or have had a mental illness. Mental illness affects people of all ages, education, income, culture. However, systemic inequalities such as racism, poverty, homelessness, discrimination, colonial and gender-based violence, among others, can worsen mental health and symptoms of mental illness, especially if mental health supports are difficult to access. Major depression affects approximately 5.4% of the Canadian population, and anxiety disorders are about 4.6% of the population. 4,012 Canadians died of suicide in 2019. And in Canada, suicide disproportionately impacts Indigenous peoples. The rate of suicide among First Nations is 3 times higher than among non-Indigenous Canadians, and 9 times higher among Inuit. And the mortality rate due to suicide among men is 3 times the rate among women, but girls and young women are 3 times more likely to harm themselves and be hospitalized from self-harm. There's also really alarming numbers with youth. And I know for myself that that's when it started for me, when I was quite young. Approximately 20% of Canadian youth are affected by mental illness or disorder. Really high depression, and also in the 10 years from 2008 to 2018, there was a 61% increase in emergency department visits and a 60% increase in hospitalizations for mental disorders. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among youth and young adults between 15 and 34. And it's hard to get help. I'm sure that's the same in wherever you're living. It's hard to get good help. A lot of it is us advocating for ourselves. I started experiencing mental illness as young as 7, and I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't seek help or tell anyone. I would continue to have panic attacks frequently during exams or when I worked my job as a teen. I never told anyone because I just thought I was losing my mind. And I thought I would snap one day. And I think that has a huge part of why I felt so trapped and continue to trap myself for protection. I got to a point where I just didn't care who knew anymore, though. And I think that was like why I say truth for me was such a freedom just by being a truth teller. I remember one day when I was on a city bus and I started having a panic attack, and I don't think I had a name for it then, but I remember being in the bus, again, early 20s, and I, started to have that rising sensation. So any of you who've had it will know, and this could be a trigger. And if this is a trigger for you, for me to talk about this, please turn me off and don't listen or watch. I know what that feels like, and it's really difficult. So I'll just give you a minute or a couple seconds if that's an incident for you or a trigger for you. But I remember I was having the rising heat kind of, and the heart that starts to race, just like it did today when I started this webinar, rising up in me, and heart racing and palms sweating and difficulty breathing. And, is this going to get worse? Like the thoughts in your mind, this isn't comfortable. And then the adrenaline spikes and the fear and the adrenaline, and it just keeps building on each other until you are in a full-blown panic attack. And I was very much leading up to that, and I could feel it happening in my body. And I thought, there's no way out. Like, this bus is driving. I can't stop the bus and get off. I don't know what I'm going to do when it's that trap, that no way out feeling that really is so hard on us. And I just turned to the woman behind me. I mean, I was alone and she was a stranger. And I was like, I don't know what I said. I'm having trouble breathing, and I'm scared, and she said to me, she was like, oh, honey, I get those too. I have panic attacks too. I have a pill for that. And I just remember, like, I was not at the point where I felt that I was ready for medication. Mentally, I just wasn't there yet. But I have never forgotten the permission that she gave me by sharing her story with me. And it's so much about what the She Is Me platform is about, is sharing our stories and seeing each other in them and resonating and going, yeah, I've had that experience too. This is okay. I'm going to be okay. There's other people who've struggled similar to me. And I think one thing I do want to kind of give you a little bit of history on or a little bit of information, again, from Canadian Mental Health Association, is just tell you a little bit about panic attacks and phobias. So that's basically what I deal with. So this is from CMHA, Canadian Mental Health Association. Everyone feels scared at times, but sometimes fear can come up in a situation that isn't expected. The fear stops us from going about our usual routines or working towards our goals. Phobias and panic disorder are 2 examples of mental illnesses that can lead to these problems. So what are phobias? Phobia is an intense fear of a specific thing, like an object, animal, or situation. So 2 common phobias are heights and dogs. We all feel scared of certain things at times in our lives, but phobias are different. People change the way they live in order to avoid the feared object or situation. For example, many people feel nervous about flying, but they will still go on a plane if they need to. Some who experience a phobia around flying may not even go to an airport. Phobias can affect relationships, school, work, career opportunities, and daily activities. What is a panic disorder? It involves repeated and unexpected panic attacks. A panic attack is a feeling of intense fear or terror that lasts for a short period of time. It involves physical sensations like a racing heart, shortness of breath, chest pain, dizziness, shaking, sweating, or nausea. I feel like sometimes when I read it, it starts to come up for me, the feelings. Some people feel like they're having a heart attack or suffocating, or fear that they're dying. However, a panic attack does go away on its own. They can be a normal reaction to a stressful situation or part of another mental illness. with panic disorder, panic attacks seem to happen for no reason. People who experience panic disorder fear more panic attacks and may worry that something bad will happen as a result of it. They may avoid places, sensations, or activities that remind them of a panic attack. And many people avoid any situation where they can't escape or find help. They may not leave their home or avoid public places. And this is called agoraphobia. That is what I have dealt with a lot since I was in my 20s. So that is what I have. And that is what I work through every day. I experience fight or flight, which means I either want to run away from my feelings or I want to fight them. Neither of these solutions work. The only way to overcome panic is through it. You must surrender to it, not feeding it with worry and what ifs, and noticing the sensations without reacting to them. Possibly the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. It is. It's harder than childbirth for me. From there, so from that point, from the bus, I got help. I found a therapist. I eventually did go on medication. I told my family, I told anyone I could. I told everyone. I made a lot of friends that way. I stayed away from city buses. I still don't really like them. I don't like flying, driving, but I still do it because I need to, and I have tools to help me. So while I'm not cured, I was not cured, I am not cured. I was being honest with those around me, and I was telling the truth as to what was going on. And that is my support slide, which comes from telling the truth to people, creating support for yourself. So in order to move forward and start working again, going for walks, now I'm a runner, believing I could do it, I had to trust, and that is my step 3. So trust means to depend on something for the future. I needed to believe I would be okay if I did the hard thing, because nothing inside my body was communicating that I would be okay. Leaning into trust means leaning into discomfort and doing it anyway. I put my trust in God. I had to trust He would carry me. I didn't trust myself, and that was my entire problem. I didn't trust my body, and I didn't trust my mind. And when your mind fails you, it's impossible to trust yourself. But I knew God, not so much from church. There's a whole sordid history there we won't go into. But I knew Him personally for myself. He spoke to me, and I believed Him. I could trust Him, and He would not harm me or ever leave me, and I was not alone. So I think a large part of the fear for me was being alone. And as a young child in my preschool years, I was in an emotionally abusive daycare where I was locked in the basement. I mean, locked to a 3-year-old, 2-year-old. So was I locked? I don't know that the door was locked, but in my mind as a young child, I was locked. I was not allowed up until lunch. And it was very much the situation where I had to earn my ability to come upstairs with good behavior. I'm sure you can see how this would lead to perfectionism, anxiety, and I still don't like to be alone. I didn't like to be alone. And what I've learned is that with God beside me, I never truly am. So on a practical level, and this may not sound practical to you guys at all, some of you might relate, but this has meant that God is in the car next to me when I'm driving, and this is in the car, God is in the plane next to me when I'm flying, and He's on a walk beside me when my heart starts to race, or on a run when I'm afraid. Or here today, as I struggle through this presentation, wondering if anything I'm saying resonates with anyone. But He sits beside me telling me that I am deeply loved and valued, and that what I say has meaning, and that I matter, and that my life is worth fighting for, and that I'm worth fighting for. And slowly, I started to trust professionals as well. My therapist, I had to believe that what she said was true, even though I didn't feel it. So I also remember her offering to come ride in the car across the bridge. I was so terrified to drive across. I was like, hell no, we are not doing that. We are not doing that. I also remember her telling me about this chart that was just so impactful in my life. And I'll kind of show you kind of like with my hand, make sure you can see me okay, like it went like this, she drew this like this, and She said, you started here, and then you went up, you've learned, you've educated yourself on anxiety. And then, oh, you have a panic attack and you drop down a little bit. And then, you go up a little bit and then you drop down again. But you started down here. And even though you feel like you're there again, you're actually up here. And you're going to keep going up and you're going to have little dips. You're going to feel like you're at the bottom, but you're not. You're never back down there again. You're never on your knees at that point where you're making that decision again. You're up here, you're learning. So even though it feels like you're dipping, you're going up. That's the direction you're going. And that has had huge impact on my life. I think about that again all the time. I started to trust also in the medication that it would work. I remember I cried the first day I took it. I felt so ashamed that I needed it, that I couldn't fight this on my own, that I couldn't just think my way out of it or pray my way out of it. But like any illness, sometimes we need external help. And I trusted that it would take some time to acclimate to my body. I started doing things that felt uncomfortable, extremely uncomfortable at times, and trusting I would be okay. Something important to mention is that a large part of this is my reality still. It's not gone. I am not cured. I am not okay, but I'm happy and I have more moments of joy than pain. I am successful. I am living my dream life and I truly long for nothing. So while I live with mental illness and I feel it every day, I choose to take chances, to say yes, to pursue freedom in spite of it. I suppose trust and faith are similar to me. It's taking the leap, not knowing exactly how it's going to turn out, but trusting everything will be okay. I couldn't be where I am today if I hadn't wholeheartedly leaned into both of those. So that story is 20 years in the making. It's been 20 years. I'm 43, and that's how long I've been kind of really learning about this illness. I've had an amazing time. I'm grateful for my life and all the challenges and the gift that mental illness has brought me. It has given me boundaries and extremely clear limits. My body tells me when I need to stop, and I respect it. If I'm tired, I rest. And if I'm anxious, I pray. And if I need a day off, I do that. And I know this is life or death for me, so it doesn't matter if people don't understand, including clients. I don't push through or ignore how I'm feeling. Here's what I do instead. I acknowledge my feelings. I ask why I'm feeling this way. I ask what is bothering me. I wonder who is contributing to my anxiety. And only I can decide if I need to do it anyway, do the thing that's making me anxious anyway, in spite of how I'm feeling, or if I just need to say no. For example, speaking publicly is something I'm passionate about. Does it bring on panic? Does it bring on anxiety? Yes. Is it something that I want to do anyways? Yes. So I'm going to push through. I'm going to not push through, but I'm going to recognize, I'm going to talk to myself, figure out what those feelings mean. And then I'm going to weigh it and I'm going to make a decision. And all day long leading up, I'm going to have to remind myself that this is something I want to do. And this is why, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it. So my final step for today is confidence. And confidence, according to Wikipedia or Oxford, no, this was Oxford Dictionary, is a feeling of self-assurance arising from one's appreciation of one's own abilities or qualities. Okay, there were a few definitions, but that was the one that felt so good to me. I love that. Confidence is just something I'm stepping into now. So confidence takes time and grace. It is having peace with who you are, accepting yourself fully, flaws and all, and embracing that. Even just give yourself a hug right now. I was like, wouldn't that be fun? Let's give ourselves a hug. Anybody watching? Do you ever do that? I'm going to do it. I'll show you how. It's so simple. Another thing you can do is put your hand, this is a Mel Robbins thing, a hand on the back of your neck, on your heart. It's like a little neck heart hug. I am only now coming into this aspect of my life. It's new and I'm loving it. It looks like slowing down when I talk, trusting my gut, standing up for what I want, speaking up for what I want, and having a fun-filled life. And is this 40? Because I'll take it. I'm 43 and 40 plus has been amazing. Confidence. that I can feel how I feel. I don't need to be constantly working on myself or fixing myself. I certainly don't need to fix anyone else either. Confidence in how I was created and the things that God wants to do through me. Confident that He created me to love women, to lift women up, to create and foster connection, to provide joy-filled and creative experiences for others. I'm confident He will show me how to do it if I get thrown off. I'm confident that whether or not my business succeeds, I will be okay. And I'm confident that I can do the things I want to. So instead of white knuckling hope, faith, and trust, which have all led me here and still live inside me, I now have confidence in my abilities. I am a public speaker. I am a leader in my community. I take amazing pictures. I provide income for my family. I laugh loudly. I talk often about my period, about sex, about how much I love my husband. I'm okay with my story. I do not need anyone else's story to be similar to mine. I'm curious and excited about life, and I wonder if mental illness is attached. I do often wonder about if mental illness is attached to my fear of losing others, but the more I like myself, the less this concerns me. Spending time with me is my favorite thing to do. Just want a second here. I am less afraid of offending others and more in favor of amplifying their voices along with mine. I know what I'm capable of, and I know there's so much more I don't know, and that excites me. It's a gift to have confidence. Anyone can have it. It's not some special secret. It's available to anyone. I've had it in many aspects of my life, in my marriage, in my photography business, and my ability to connect women and to connect with women. I always haven't had it in my mind, and I think that's a hard thing for me to admit. It feels vulnerable and opens me up to judgment, but I'm confident enough in myself now that it doesn't matter what other people think. I know I can help people by sharing my story, and it isn't that important what some ignorant person thinks. And that for me is freedom. This is my pursuit and my steadfast focus, my desire for myself and every woman, that she may experience freedom in her life, and that she may know and love herself, and that she may bring joy to herself, and through that it extends to those around her. And if you have seen yourself in my story, I would love for you to reach out. I founded a women's community called the Well Collaborative in 2018. It fosters connection between professional women. We believe that networking doesn't have to be awkward. It can be genuine and non-competitive. As well, we focus on mental health wellness. We offer both virtual and in-person programming, and have members across Canada, in Saskatchewan mainly, and then also in the States a few. Our team, we are all partners in the well business. There's 5 of us. We practice the feminine economy, and we believe we're focused on mental health wellness and community support. I also co-created a retreat company called Inner Illume, where I bring women together with another partner for rest, play, and to illuminate their inner light. We are mainly photographers, but any kind of creatives are welcome with us to join in. We have a second retreat in Elora, Ontario, and it's actually super great for Americans because our dollar is really good right now for you, not for us. So it's a great price if you want to check that out. And then photography is my passion. It's kind of what keeps me grounded and really healthy and in the moment. And I love capturing authentic emotions in people. I love family, I love connection, and I just love people in general. So thank you so much for your time today. It has just meant the world really to me to be able to share my story. It's the first time I've shared my full story, and it was very therapeutic. So I hope that my story helps somebody, and I just want you to know that you matter, and that I matter too, and that together it is just so important to share everything, all of our stories and what has went on with us. So thank you, She Is Me. It's so wonderful to be doing this.